Science declared them extinct. The ground disagrees. For over a century, extinction has been treated like a locked door. A species dies, a name gets crossed off a list, and the case closes. But doors leave marks. And in the last few years, researchers, cavers, and hikers keep finding the same thing in the last place they expected it. A footprint, not a bone, not a tooth in a drawer. A footprint, pressed into mud, ash, or stone, exactly where an extinct animal shouldn't have been walking. Some of these tracks are ancient, sealed in rock for tens of thousands of years, and they're rewriting the timeline of when these animals actually vanished. Others are recent, too recent, fresh enough that trackers, biologists, and skeptics alike have gone back into the field to check and quietly walked out without an answer. We've pulled together 10 of these cases, moving from the oldest, most confirmed tracks in the fossil record to the newest, most disputed prints ever photographed. Along the way, we'll watch scientists shift a date by centuries because of a single hoofprint, watch a legend outlive its own debunking, and watch a lab try to put a footprint back into the ground on purpose. And the last one on this list, the case that closes out our countdown, is the most obsessed over, most argued about footprint mystery in modern science. Stay with us to the end. Let's start at number 10. Number 10. The cave bear. High in the Dolomites, at nearly 3,000 meters, a caving team drops a rope into Conturine's cave, one of the highest cave bear dens ever documented. Their headlamps sweep across a floor of hardened clay, and there, pressed in rows, are footprints. Dozens of them. Some small enough to fit a housecat's paw, others the size of a dinner plate. Ursus spelaeus was not a bear you'd want to meet at a campsite. Standing on its hind legs, it could look a tall man in the eye from 2 heads up, and on all fours it moved with the bulk of a small car. So when a trackway like this survives intact for over 20,000 years, researchers don't just see footprints. They see a family moving through the dark, cubs trailing behind an adult, exactly the way a modern bear leads her young today. The cave bear disappeared around 24,000 years ago, and for decades the explanation was simple. The Ice Age tightened its grip, food thinned out, and the species couldn't keep up. Therefore, the story went cold along with the climate. But here's where the ground complicates things. Sediment layered above these prints shows the cave was still being visited right up until the population collapsed. No slow retreat, no gradual fade. Something pushed these animals out fast. Still, the science holds together. Isotope analysis on bones from the same cave points to a diet already stressed before the freeze deepened, which lines up with the extinction date almost perfectly. No mystery reopened here, just a species that left its footprints as the last thing it did before it left the fossil record for good. A family, still walking, frozen in the exact posture of leaving. A confirmed exit then. But the next case belonged to an animal whose antlers you already know, even if you've never seen where it stood. Number 9. The Irish elk. On a wet morning in County Meath, Ireland, turf cutters are stripping away peat for fuel when their spades stop against something hard and pale. It isn't a root. It's an antler. And beside it, pressed into a harder layer of clay the peat had sealed for thousands of years, a set of deep, splayed hoofprints. Megaloceros giganteus earned the nickname Irish elk, but it wasn't a true elk, and it wasn't only Irish. It stood as tall as a doorway at the shoulder, and its antlers alone could span the width of a small car, tip to tip, the largest antlers any deer has ever grown. A single print from an adult could swallow a dinner plate whole. The species vanished from Ireland around 11,000 years ago, and for a long time popular science blamed the antlers themselves. Too heavy, too extravagant, a genetic dead end. So the story became a cautionary tale about evolution overreaching itself. Here's the twist. These newly exposed tracks sit in a layer dated hundreds of years after the last confirmed bone in the region. That's not supposed to happen. If the prints are right, a small population outlasted the official extinction date, tucked into a shrinking pocket of grassland while the forests closed in around them. The counterpoint keeps the myth in check. Bog chemistry can shift sediment layers unpredictably, and researchers caution the dating gap could be an illusion of preservation, not survival. Still, nobody's fully closed the file. The bones told one story. The bog floor is quietly telling another. And 3,000 miles away, An island bird was about to leave a footprint nobody thought it could. Number 8. The dodo. In a mangrove-fringed mudflat on Mauritius, a team excavating a swamp deposit, the same type of site that has already produced hundreds of dodo bones, finds something the fossil record has never handed over before. A footprint. 3 thick toes, splayed wide, pressed into hardened mud alongside the bones of the very bird that made them. The dodo is famous, but almost entirely from bones and a handful of secondhand sketches drawn by sailors who weren't exactly careful artists. Raphis cucullatus stood about as tall as a large dog on its hind legs, but built like a barrel, heavier than a modern turkey, with feet closer in proportion to an ostrich's than a pigeon's, which is its closest living relative. Dutch sailors hunted the dodo, introduced rats and pigs that raided its nests, and within less than a century of first contact, the species was gone. Therefore, humans didn't just witness this extinction, they caused it, start to finish, on record. Here's where it gets strange. The footprint's toe spacing doesn't quite match the walking gait scientists had reconstructed from skeletons alone. It suggests a slightly different stride, maybe a faster, more active bird than the slow, dumb caricature history left us with. But researchers are careful here. A single print without a matching trackway isn't enough to rewrite dodo biology. It's a data point, not a verdict, and the team is still searching the same mudflat for a second one to confirm it. Until they find it, the world's most famous clumsy bird gets to keep a small, unproven claim to speed. One footprint. One rewritten assumption, pending confirmation. And from a slow-moving island bird, we jump to a predator that hunted like nothing alive today. Number 7. The marsupial lion. Deep inside Victoria Fossil Cave, part of the Narracoorte Cave system in South Australia, a caving expedition follows a beam of light down a shaft that hasn't been surveyed in decades. On a flowstone floor, they find something extraordinary. A trackway of clawed prints, each toe tipped with a mark from a retractable claw, leading straight to the edge of a pitfall trap the cave itself became. Thylacoleo carnifex is sometimes called the marsupial lion, though it wasn't related to lions at all. Its closest living relative is the wombat. Despite that, pound for pound, its bite is estimated to have rivaled a leopard's, and it was roughly the size of a large dog, but built with a thumb-like claw on each forefoot, something no big cat on Earth has ever had. The species disappeared around 45,000 years ago, right around the time humans first arrived in Australia, so researchers have long debated whether people, climate, or both pushed it out. Here's the catch. These tracks show the animal moving fast, then stopping abruptly at the pit's edge. The same trap that likely killed the individuals whose bones litter the chamber floor below. It's not just a footprint. It's the last few seconds of a life, preserved in stone. Paleontologists are confident in the read. Predator, prey trail nearby, then nothing. No mystery about extinction here, just a rare freeze frame of exactly how one specific animal met its end. Caught mid-stride by the same cave system that would later preserve it for 45,000 years. A clean, tragic ending, fully explained. From here, the list leaves the fossil record behind. The next case starts with a legend the locals never stopped telling. Number 6. The giant ground sloth. In 1895, a German rancher named Hermann Eberhard is exploring a cave on his land near Puerto Natales, in Chilean Patagonia, when he finds a patch of hide. Thick, leathery, studded with what looks like bone pellets, still smelling faintly of preservation. Locals had already been telling stories for years about a creature living deep in the mountains that left tracks too big for any known animal. Mylodon darwinii stood roughly the height of an ox, but built far bulkier, with claws long enough to gouge a groove in solid wood and a weight comparable to a small car. It went extinct somewhere between 10 and 11,000 years ago, and the leading explanation is straightforward. As the ice retreated, hunting pressure from early Patagonian settlers, combined with a shrinking habitat, therefore closed the loop on a species that had survived ice ages before. But here's the wrinkle the cave itself created. That skin Eberhard found was so well preserved that, for a moment, some believed the animal might still be out there. Expeditions were funded, naturalists in Europe seriously entertained the idea, and the cave, now called Cueva del Milodon, still draws people looking for tracks in its back chambers. The counterpoint is blunt. Radiocarbon dating puts that hide firmly at over 10,000 years old. No wiggle room. The living sloth theory died decades ago in every lab that tested it. No expedition ever found a body, only more of the same worn tracks, retold by a new generation of guides. The science settled it. The legend never quite did, and Patagonia isn't the only place where a myth and a track record refuse to separate. Halfway across the world, an island that gave us the largest bird that ever lived has its own trail. Number 5. The elephant bird. In the rainforest interior of Madagascar, a village guide leads a small research team along a route locals have avoided for generations, pointing to a set of 3-toed impressions sunk deep into dried mud near a riverbank, each one nearly the length of a dinner plate. He calls the animal that made them Vorompatra. Outsiders call it the elephant bird. Epiornis maximus is the heaviest bird known to have ever lived, taller than a doorway, heavier than a full-grown adult human by several hundred pounds, and its single egg alone could hold the volume of over 100 chicken eggs. So when a print this size turns up fresh, not fossilized, it doesn't fit the accepted timeline at all. Officially, the elephant bird went extinct somewhere around the 1000s to 1600s, driven out by deforestation, egg harvesting and hunting as human settlement spread across the island. Therefore, its disappearance is one of the more human-caused extinctions in the fossil record, well documented in nearby subfossil sites. Here's where the legend pushes back. Malagasy oral tradition has described a giant bird persisting in the island's most remote forest interior for centuries after that official date, and this particular print was found less than 5 years ago, in mud too soft to have survived seasons of rain. Ornithologists remain skeptical, pointing out that large, flightless relatives like the cassowary leave surprisingly similar tracks, and no bone, feather, or photograph has ever backed the print up. A convincing shape, without a body to match it to. A footprint with no bird behind it, for now. And the next case takes us somewhere colder, where a giant bird story gets a very different kind of witness. Number 4. The moa. In the remote backcountry of New Zealand's South Island, a group of trampers radios in a discovery from a riverbed few people ever reach on foot. A line of massive 3-toed prints, spaced in strides too long for any bird still living on the islands. They photograph the trail before rain erases it, then report it to researchers who make the multi-day hike in to check. At its largest, Dinornis, the giant moa, stood taller than a basketball hoop and had no wings at all, not even the small vestigial ones ostriches keep. A single stride could cover the length of a car, and its legs alone were thicker than a grown man's torso. Moa vanished within a few centuries of Polynesian settlement of New Zealand, hunted for meat and eggs at a rate the species couldn't recover from, so most historians treat this as one of the fastest, most human-driven extinctions on record, wrapping up by the 1400s at the latest. But here's the catch that keeps this case alive. Isolated sightings and tracks like this one keep surfacing from Fiordland's most inaccessible valleys, areas so remote that a small, undiscovered population has never been fully ruled out by biologists studying the region. Wildlife officials remain doubtful, and most tracks like this one turn out to belong to large deer or feral goats moving in unusual gaits. Still, the terrain is vast enough, the valley steep enough to have never been fully surveyed on foot, and the last confirmed moa bone recent enough that nobody has closed the door completely. A trail that fades before anyone can follow it far enough. From New Zealand's forests, the next case moves to frozen ground, where the footprint isn't the only thing coming back. Number 3. The woolly mammoth. In the Siberian permafrost along a riverbank in Yakutia, a thaw exposes something that happens more every year now. A mammoth carcass, partially intact, and beside it, a set of deep, rounded prints frozen into mud that hardened around them before it could ever decay. Local yakut hunters, who have found dozens of these carcasses over the decades, lead researchers straight to the site. An adult woolly mammoth stood roughly the height of a small elephant, but its footprint alone could be wider than a car tire, cushioned by a thick pad that let it walk across snow without sinking. So even a single track like this one carries the animal's full weight in one clean impression. Mammoths disappeared from the mainland around 10,000 years ago, with a small holdout population surviving on Wrangel Island, until just around 4,000 years ago. Therefore, extinct for the woolly mammoth has always been a moving target, more recent than most people assume. Here's where the story stops being just paleontology. Teams at biotech labs and partner universities are actively working to bring mammoth traits back into Asian elephant embryos, aiming for cold-tolerant hybrids that could walk Siberian ground again within years, not centuries. Skeptics in the genetics community are quick to note that a hybrid with mammoth traits is not a resurrected mammoth, and the ecological, ethical, and technical hurdles are still enormous. So the counterpoint isn't about doubting the footprint. It's about doubting whether the animal that made it might in some form make new ones soon. For the first time on this list, we're not just looking at an old track, we're looking at one that might get a sequel. And the next case takes the de-extinction question out of the lab and puts it back in the mountains. Number 2. The Caspian tiger. In the Ili River Delta region of Kazakhstan, a border patrol officer reports fresh pug marks in snow near a reed thicket. Paw prints larger than any recorded stray dog or lynx in the area, spaced in a stride pattern consistent with a big cat that officially vanished from these mountains decades ago. Wildlife officials investigate before the tracks melt. Panthera tigris virgata, the Caspian tiger, once ranged from Turkey to western China, and an adult male's paw print could be wider than a human hand spread flat. It was one of the largest tiger subspecies ever recorded, rivaled only by its closest living relative. The Caspian tiger was declared extinct by the 1970s, wiped out by habitat loss along river systems and organized hunting campaigns across Central Asia. Therefore, for 50 years, any tiger track found in this region was assumed to belong to memory, not to an animal. Here's the twist that changes the math. Genetic testing has confirmed the Caspian tiger and the Amur tiger are close enough relatives that conservationists, through Kazakhstan's own reintroduction program in the Ili-Balkhash region, have already begun releasing Amur tigers into the exact landscape the Caspian tiger once patrolled. So when officers find a fresh track like this one, the honest answer is almost anticlimactic. It likely belongs to one of the reintroduced Amur tigers, not a ghost population. But the print still proves something remarkable. The same ground that swallowed one tiger subspecies is, right now, learning to hold another. Extinction reversed, on a technicality. And that same tension, between what's gone and what keeps almost coming back, built the most obsessive, most photographed footprint mystery science has ever tried and failed to close. Number 1. The thylacine. In 1982, a Tasmanian wildlife officer is camped in the state's remote northwest, watching an animal in torchlight for several minutes before it vanishes into the bush, striped back, stiff tail, a gait like nothing else on the island. He doesn't get a photograph. But in the years since, dozens of hikers, farmers, and researchers have come forward with something almost as compelling. Footprints. Four-toed, non-retractable claw marks, a stride pattern that doesn't match a dog's. Thylacinus cynocephalus, the Tasmanian tiger, was roughly the size of a mid-sized dog, striped like something out of a children's book, with a jaw that could open nearly 180 degrees, wider than any living mammals. The last confirmed individual died in a Hobart Zoo enclosure in 1936, and the species was officially declared extinct in 1986, 50 years to the day after that death. So officially, the story ends there. Therefore, every print found since 1936 should belong to a dog, a fox, or a hoax, and most experts assume exactly that. But here's the catch that's kept this case alive for 90 years. Track casts collected from Tasmania's Southwest Wilderness show 4 toes and claw marks inconsistent with any dog breed on the island, and the terrain where most of these prints turn up is so remote that a small, undetected population has never been fully ruled out by biologists who study it. The counterpoint is just as strong. No confirmed carcass, no clear photograph, and no camera trap in decades of dedicated searching has produced a single frame. Most experts believe hope, not biology, is what's kept this animal walking in the public imagination. And that's exactly what makes it the perfect place to end. 10 cases, and every single one asks the same question in a different voice. Is a footprint proof of life, or just the last echo of something that's already gone? science declared them extinct. The ground kept disagreeing, sometimes with a fossil old enough to rewrite a date, sometimes with a legend too specific to dismiss, and sometimes with a track fresh enough to send trained researchers back into the wild with a flashlight, and no good answer. 10 footprints, 10 different kinds of evidence, solid stone, ambiguous legend, and one case where the print might soon get a living animal walking behind it again. And after all of it, extinct starts to look less like a locked door and more like a label we update when we're finally forced to. So the next time you're told a species is gone for good, gone, no exceptions, it might be worth asking what, exactly, that verdict was based on. A skeleton in a museum drawer? Or the absence of a footprint nobody's found yet? If one of these 10 cases got under your skin, you already know which one. Tell us in the comments which footprint you'd want investigated first. And if you want the next mystery like this one, you know what to do next.